China. Everybody seems to talk about it in just about every topic of conversation you have these days. China and the movies is certainly no exception. Being the second largest film market in the world means that studios and distributors will often look to China as a source of much needed box office revenue. And when it comes specifically to Marvel films, we often find ourselves talking about why certain Marvel movies get to play in China and why some don't. Has China been that important to Marvel films? And how significant is it that after 4 years of being absent from the Chinese market, films like Black Panther 2 and Ant-Man 3 are now back? Hey guys, I'm John Campea, host of The John Campea Show, a daily 2-hour live stream talking about movies, movie news, TV, and streaming. Come on by and join us sometime. Marvel films have been a juggernaut for well over a decade, and the Chinese market has certainly played a part in that. But how big of a part? How badly has being absent from China hurt the MCU? To get into that, let's look at the Chinese market and why so many films, including Marvel ones, haven't played there. The first thing we need to understand is that China doesn't let many Western films into the country. They have a set limit, a quota, if you will. This quota system in China is a set of regulations put in place by the Chinese government that limits the number of foreign films that can be released in the country each and every year. This system is intended to protect the domestic film industry and to ensure that a certain percentage of films shown in China are Chinese productions. Now, under this quota system, the Chinese government only allows a certain number of foreign films to be imported and shown in the country each year. This number currently is set at around 34 foreign films per year, which includes both Hollywood and non-Hollywood productions. The quota is then divided between movies that are shown in theaters and those that are shown on streaming platforms. To give a sense of just how small this number of 34 allowances is, in 2021 there were 405 movies released. Now, the quota system also includes a provision for co-productions between Chinese and foreign studios. Films that are co-produced with Chinese studios can bypass the quota system and be released in China without counting towards the 34 film limit. This is one of the reasons why we see more and more Hollywood movies being partially or fully shot in China and featuring Chinese actors, Chinese production companies, and Chinese themes. For example, you've probably seen the Hawaii Brothers logo before such movies as John Wick, Moonfall, Warcraft, and others. And now you know why. The quota system has a significant impact on the success or lack thereof of Hollywood films in China. The limited number of spots available means that competition for release dates is fierce, and most films won't be able to secure a release in the country at all. Additionally, the censorship in China can lead to significant changes in Hollywood films in order to secure a release. For example, the Tom Cruise mega hit Top Gun Maverick was asked by Chinese financing partner Tencent to remove the Taiwanese flag from Maverick's jacket. Let's just say that China and Taiwan have a complex relationship. The producers agreed and removed the flag, but they later put it back in when it became apparent that they weren't going to get one of those Chinese release slots anyway, and Tencent backed out of their financing deal. Disney faced a similar situation when their animated film Lightyear was asked by Chinese officials to remove a brief same-sex kiss scene from the film. China has long cracked down on any depictions of homosexuality. Disney declined to make the change, and Lightyear never saw the inside of a Chinese movie theater. Now, regardless if the issue was one of quota or some form of censorship, no Marvel film has played in China since Spider-Man Far From Home all the way back in 2019. That means Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, No Way Home, Doctor Strange, and Thor 4 have had to make do without China. Well, now Marvel films are returning to China. It's been made official that both Black Panther Wakanda Forever and Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania will be getting a Chinese release. Why these films get to return isn't entirely clear, but it's likely a combination of trying to ease tensions with the West and pure economical necessity. After Avatar: The Way of Water made almost $230 million at the Chinese box office, Chinese officials saw a much-needed economic kickstart with welcoming Marvel films back into the fold. The head of the China Center for Economics and Business said that it's most likely Marvel films are returning because China is facing increasing economic headwinds at home. But whatever the actual reasons are for Marvel films returning to China, we have to ask the question of how much it matters. For example, when Black Panther Wakanda Forever fell short of the $1 billion mark that its predecessor made, many people pointed out that the sequel had not yet had a Chinese release like the first one did, and that if it had had a Chinese release date, it would have easily made the $1 billion mark. But would it have? Actually, no. When we go back and look at the numbers of the first Black Panther movie, we see that it made $105 million in China. That means even if Black Panther 2 made the same amount, it still wouldn't have hit the $1 billion mark. Now, this speaks to the widely held belief that Chinese markets have played a major role in the MCU's success. And while there are a couple of individual films where you could certainly say that, as a whole, the percentage of Marvel's box office results that come from China aren't as big as you might think. For example, of Iron Man's $585 million box office take, only about 2.5% of it came from China. Of the Avengers' $1.5 billion, only 5.6% was from China. Of Iron Man 3's $1.2 billion, 10% was from China. Guardians of the Galaxy $773 million was only made up of 11% of Chinese money. As time went on, the percentages of the Chinese market's contributions to Marvel's box office went up, but still never really hit those game-changer numbers some seem to think they have. Captain America's Civil War's $1.15 billion was made up of 15% Chinese box office. Spider-Man Homecoming's $880 million was a full 13% from China. Ant-Man and the Wasp's $622 million was a big 19% Chinese, and Spider-Man Far From Home was repped by 17% from the Chinese box office. The biggest contribution that China made to a Marvel film was 2019's Avengers Endgame. Of the film's record-shattering $2.8 billion take, China contributed over $632 million, or a full 22% of the film's total box office. So is a Chinese release important to Marvel films? Well, sure it is. Even just percentage points of the overall box office still represents tens and sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars in box office revenue. It's just not the night and day game-changing numbers some people think the Chinese box office represents. Still, when a territory like China has 65,000 theater screens compared to the US's 41,000 screens, Marvel and every other studio will always be looking for ways to get their movies into the Chinese market. That'll do it for this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. My name is John Campea, and we'll see you next time.